Ukraine Crisis Media Center continues its work, and the topic of the next briefing is Russian interference to the media space during the presidential elections in Ukraine. Our speakers are Maksym, Tuliev, chairman of the board of the analytical group of Liubov, Tsybulska, head of the hybrid warfare analytical group of the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, Alexei Bocharov, director general of media business Ukraine. The first, we give the floor to Liubov. So I represent the group of analysis of the hybrid warfare. This is the special group in Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We analyze and study and monitor Russian media, and we study Russian narratives about Ukraine and about Western nations, EU countries and the US. We followed how Russian media highlighted the Ukrainian election several months ago. They started a large-scale discreditation campaign of elections, and they called these elections illegal, and they said that the other countries should not recognize these elections. First, they said that these elections, they are orchestrated by the United States and several countries of EU. And the second reason is that Ukrainians who live in Russia, they do not have the opportunity to vote, and also the residents of Crimea and Donbass. Also, they spoke about chaos in Ukraine, and they promoted this idea heavily to the international media and international observers. And also we monitored that the word house was used while they were speaking about Ukrainian elections, but international observers recognized that there were no systemic violations during the election process. I would like to show a short video, and then I will tell you about some narratives we recorded recently. So the video is on.
В том, что действующая власть готовит фальсификации, не сомневается, кажется, никто.
Не гнушаются кандидаты бороться за голоса избирателей способами, которые вне закона. В нацполицию поступило более 4000 обращений. Открыто 300 уголовных производств. Немало подкупов. По данным МВД, чаще всего деньги предлагают за голоса в пользу Петра Порошенко и Юлии Тимошенко.
Существует некий зашифрованный канал, который называется Tunnel IPsec, который можно использовать для подмены цифр. А схема следующая. Данные из окружных комиссий отправляют в ЦИК. И вот пока они, что называется, летят, их подменяют. В итоге ЦИК получает цифры, которые выгодны Порошенко.
Даже при всех подкупах избирателей, фальшивых бюллетенях, электронных подтасовках и усилиях СБУ, большинство на Украине все же не верят в то, что Порошенко победит.
Наблюдателей из России киевские власти просто-напросто не пустили, как не дали возможность проголосовать миллионам украинцев, живущих в нашей стране.
Юлия Тимошенко тем временем переживает за украинцев, которые живут за рубежом. Больше всего их в России миллионы, но майданная власть лишила их возможности проголосовать.
В последние дни все чаще сообщалось о готовящихся подтасовках и фальсификациях. Так, права голоса оказались лишены жители Донбасса и миллионы украинцев, проживающих в России.
Согласно опросам, уверенно лидирует Владимир Зеленский, а вот за второе место развернулась нешуточная борьба между Петром Порошенко и Юлией Тимошенко и лидером оппозиционной платформы «За жизнь» Юрием Бойко.
На первом месте, согласно экзит-полам, идет предсказуемый шоумен Владимир Зеленский. Около 27% голосов отдают за него. Далее в этом рейтинге действующий президент Украины Петр Порошенко от 16 до 17%, согласно экзит-полу. У лидера оппозиционной платформы «За жизнь» Юрия Бойко около 15%.
Чтобы никакого Порошенко. Но если Тимошенко, то не признаю. Только один. Зеленский, молодой, честный, чистый, энергичный.
Порошенко придется просто бежать из страны.
Стандартное клише – выборы проходят в спокойной обстановке, на этот раз не подходит абсолютно. На улице городов власти вывели бронетехнику, на вокзалах и в аэропортах дежурит спецназ СБУ. В воздух подняты беспилотники.
С каждым часом предвыборные страсти все жестче. Это лишь усиливает недоверие избирателей к предстоящему в воскресенье голосованию.
По данным соцопросов, 59% украинцев не верят, что выборы будут честными.
Сейчас народ формулирует так, а что их ждет дальше? Третий Майдан, шестой президент или военный переворот?
Отже, що ми So what we saw that a lot of time was dedicated to Ukrainian elections, and they highlighted the days of campaign and the day of elections, and all channels in Russia spoke about it, and program that is called 60 Minutes, they spoke about this topic. This was the marathon, and they said that the elections are falsified, that they are held, and they said that they spoke about junta, and they said that population wanted to have pro-Russian president, and that the power falsifies the results of the elections in order to prevent boycott from being among the leaders of the race. Also, we see that they show that there is big tension during elections, and that Ukrainians among themselves, that they quarrel, that there is chaos. And also I would like to draw your attention to the idea of the third Maidan. They spoke about it a lot. They write about it in the social media, especially Russian social media contact. And the third Maidan is the narrative that envisages civil war, and this narrative supports the idea that Ukraine is a failed state, as they say it. And this technology of polarization of social expectations, they also used it during elections in the US. And they employed social media. Now they use traditional media, TV. We all understand what channels broadcast Russian agenda in Ukraine. And our group, we see that on the social media in Ukraine, there is some sort of polarization. That's why it is important not to be useful idiots, and to respect each other. So I will be glad to answer your questions later. Thank you. Good afternoon, Maksym Tuliev. I'm the member of the Internet Association of Ukraine. So these are 200 enterprises that work in communication, and we have a practical view on the problem. My enterprise hosts one of the servers of CC, and I saw these channels of PSEC, and it is really difficult for me to hear and see this, and we do not see technical interference of Russia as it could be, because we know the vulnerabilities in the networks of Ukraine and in EC, and why there is no technical interference. Everyone expected it, but we do not have it. There was no massive attacks, no exchange of requisites, and there was no expected attack on censorship on the internet, because this is also a vulnerable system. I believe, technically speaking, it is great that we have elections with the use of paper ballots, not like in Estonia, not like in US, where during elections they use electronic means. So I will answer this question later, maybe after second round, because we expect technical interferences. These are serious things from the side of Russia in the second round, because this will be a decisive round. And the fate of our country will be decided then.
Good afternoon. I'm Alexei Bocharov, and I'm a Director General of the Ukrainian Association of Media Business, and we are one of the major producers of both electronic ads and commercials, and also the written publications for advertisement. So I also agree with this notion that we should not be treated as the useful idiots, and we are dealing mostly, and I try to present here my view via the prism of the business relations. And what I see is the large amount of money they are channeled into Ukrainian electoral analyses to some of the analytical centers, and because the general trend is that the quality journalism in Ukraine is lacking, and if we take, for example, the top 20, so to say, mainstream Ukrainian media, with the largest share of the readers and viewers and listeners, I think that besides them, we need to speak also about the local media, and I'd say that they cover 50 to 60% of the audience, or Ukrainian audience. Therefore, I think that these media, they are not monitored during the election campaign, but mostly these local media, or many of them at least, they also receive some of the money that is paid for the electoral process by different candidates, and therefore I view the vote of yesterday and the runoff, I think they both should be viewed through this prism of the war of the budgets of the candidates, how much money is spent for political ads by different candidates. And so for me, for example, yesterday's results were expected, were predictable because of the media influence. Therefore, I think that we should not be those useful idiots, and as the media we should do our social function as we are expected by the society, and also we need to take into account when we analyze the election campaign that war of the budgets, the sizes of the budgets of different candidates that are spent on getting their messages through to the audience. And the third is also the influence, types of influence of different types of media, like, for example, central media or nationwide media, or local media or regional media, for example, at the level of rayon, local district, smallest administrative unit in Ukraine. So that local press plays important role at the local level. So these are the most important media trends affecting the election campaign. I would like to add something by saying that there is the trend, there has been the trend recently of shutting down, of not shutting down, but rather closing of some of the satellite broadcast channels when they become coded, and the public cannot access them unless they subscribe to them and pay money for them. But if we take a person, rank and file Ukrainian citizen, who had this satellite dish, for example, and who had an opportunity to watch TV, the paid channels of TV, if they are confronted by this option that they would have to pay, say from the day one on for viewing this or the other channel, the majority of those people would just stop viewing these paid channels. Many citizens would not start paying money for them, and they might rather start watching Russian TV channels that are broadcast for free. Well, the issue of the access to content is now multifaceted, and those shares of paid and versus non-paid content, there are different models, and the digital media and traditional media, the balance among them or between them is a matter in itself. But each editor-in-chief of every news outlet, of every publication, they should somehow espouse this social position, but at the same time we understand that they have certain economic conditions for their work, for the work of their media. Therefore, if we speak about, for example, the local newspapers, local newspapers are practically, can be said that they are the only fully paid channel, because the many channels just broadcast or publish a lot of information, news and so on, free of charge. And if especially local newspapers start being published via internet with free access to their content, the question would be how many of them would survive if they do not generate profits from the viewers or readers. Any questions? Have you analyzed any influence that was exerted by the Ukrainian media on the Ukrainians who live in Russia, although they were deprived by the Ukrainian authorities of the right to vote this time? We did not have any means to analyze how the messages, for example, by our candidates were brought to the citizens of Ukraine who work and live in the Russian Federation. But generally speaking, this very notion of depriving the citizens of our country of the right to vote, those of them who were in the Russian Federation, for them it was very demoralizing, I'd say, very depressing for many of them. Any more questions? Well, speaking about this loss of trust, we can say that the Russian media highlighted the differences and thus between the candidates and among the candidates, and thus they also somehow strengthened that loss of faith into the candidates. Therefore, again, we should stick to this point of not being useful idiots and not transmitting these, differences, highlighting these differences in our comments, in our Ukrainian media. But we will see how it all develops in the runoff, or in this remaining part of the campaign before the second round vote. But my question is, how strong do you feel is our media, and how efficient or how effective was that interference, if you will, or actions, or information campaign by the Russian media? Well, as I have told you, TV has been used mostly in this information campaign, because TV is the most intense, so to say, media, covering the largest audiences, and therefore our view was that we didn't even have to analyze the other media, because it could all be seen on TV, and therefore we all understand that there was direct political campaign or direct political advertisement, and here we come to the need to debate, to discuss the role of the media, their functions, their social responsibility, so to say. And I think when we have the data of the first round, the final results, we can continue with this discussion. But as long as the Ukrainian media are owned by the oligarchs, by major financial and entrepreneurial groups in our country, they would all remain biased. And you all know it too well, how the different candidates and their media present the positions of different other candidates, of the other candidates who are their competitors. And Mr. Poroshenko media here are a good example. I would add by saying that the intensity, so to say, of this messages, of the transmission of the messages typical for the Russian media, they are certainly more intense on the Russian TV, on the first channel, first channel of the Russian TV. It's much stronger than that of the most pro-Russian, if we may say so, of the Ukrainian media and TV channels. Therefore, in my view, if we want to make our messages, our candidates' messages, to be brought more effectively, more extensively to the Ukrainian audience, I think that as far as TV is concerned, all these royalties, all these paid access things should be removed, so that the public can access all the TV channels and all media content free of charge. This closing practically with the payments with different charges and fees of the TV channels and other media channels is a way to nowhere. It's a dead end in my view. For example, especially in the regions that neighbor on the Russian Federation, the access there to the Russian media, Russian TV, is much easier. They are very widely accessed by the public. Therefore, my recommendation would be that at least for these 3 weeks that remain before the runoff, these payments should be, these charges should be removed from all the TV content. I fully support that. But at the same time, I need to point out that from the business point of view, somebody is supposed to pay for the production and distribution of the media product, and we all know who that might be. If those people have, these positions of statesmen, then they could do that. But as far as I know, nobody talks about that so far, has talked about that so far. And if we speak about different angles of the media policy, the ethics standards in journalism, in Ukrainian journalism, it's a long discussion and it's a long way, we have a long way to go. Therefore, in my view, the best way to reach the largest segments of Ukrainian audience is to remove all these barriers in the form of fees and charges and make all the contents free access. But somebody should certainly finance that, cover the expenses for their work. But who is going to do that? I cannot answer that question yet. Any more questions? If my question is that if we, according to our data, have at least 6% of our population viewing regularly the Russian media, how much would you think we would, so to say, recover if we remove these charges and fees and make all the media content open? Well, I doubt the figure you mentioned. I'm afraid it could be not 6 but 60% because different people they view if not TV but some other media via the internet, and I'm not sure that it's that your percentage points that you mentioned was quite correct. Well, I would agree. I'd say that a lot of people whom I know, they view different Russian social media and the internet, and I'd say that if you go, for example, to Poltava region or Cherkasy region, you can just switch on any TV set that has the satellite dish, and you will have access to all sorts of channels, both Russian and other foreign channels. And I do not only mean the removal, so to say, of these charges and these fees. I also mean how the motivation of the people could be changed by this open contents, open access contents, and that is also important, clearly. But the information is the only thing that can influence the voters' choices and preferences and views. So who can do that? Are the journalists to do that, or the media themselves? Well, clearly both the media and the journalists, and for example, if the media cannot earn money in the course of the election campaign by transmitting some interesting contents, interesting to the viewers, then they start engaging into different prepaid, so to say, in the transmission of prepaid data on under the guise of analysis, electoral process analysis, and so on and so forth. If there are no more questions, thank you very much for your attention. We wind up our briefing at this point.